I'm Rob Snyder. The tactic that I want to share is something that I've seen with over a dozen companies who have gone from 0 to $1 million ARR that I've helped. And I don't know, maybe 30, 50 others that have gotten their first 10 customers using it. The tactic is kind of weird, but it's pretty straightforward. It is, instead of trying to pitch in your sales conversation, it is use a case study to guide your sales conversation. What that literally means is, instead of you going into a sales conversation and trying to probe for pain points, do discovery, and then demo your fancy product, you literally just say, hey, I don't know if we're a fit for you. I want to walk through a case study of a customer who we really helped. You can tell me how you're different. If it's relevant, cool, we can talk about how to do it. If not, no worries. And the case study guides the entire conversation. There's a very specific structure to it. But what it does is the case study helps you determine who you should be talking to. So the case study should be relevant. And then the structure of the conversation brings down the level of stress in the conversation, so you can actually have a good conversation and determine if they have demand or not. And then they buy, you don't sell, and you figure out what your hell yes case study is based on their objections. So that's pretty much it. This is a tactic for founders to use. This is not for post-product market fit sellers who have been hired into a company, right? You have a sales process that works, do that. When you're a founder in the early stage, trying to figure out who is your hell yes customer and why and what are they actually buying and what are you delivering, this is a tactic that you can implement in like an hour to create a case study structure, and you can create a deck that helps you walk customers through it. I've given out, there are like free templates out there on that I've put online. You can just copy that. A lot of people do that, and yeah, it's basically, it should be fairly straightforward how to implement it. The hard part is just, based on these conversations, how do you debug that case study and your execution?
If that resonates with you, listen along. Also, check out our other episodes. You're listening to TLDR, the B2B SaaS growth podcast brought to you by Spear Growth. The goal of the podcast is to enable you, our listeners, to generate an additional $100,000 in cumulative pipeline by May 2024. To do this, we bring people who have made a real impact in their companies. They cut through the fluff and dive deep into one tactic or strategy of theirs. I'm your host Ishan. Let's generate pipeline. Hey Rob, thank you so much for showing up on the podcast and with such an amazing topic. Before we get into the topic, for anyone who hasn't seen your content, hasn't been following you for a while, can you just quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, totally. My name's Rob. I am a founder, have been a founder before. My background is that I thought I knew what I was doing because I had worked at McKinsey, and then I had gone to Harvard Business School, and then I had raised money for a startup. And then I got punched in the teeth for 2 years trying to push a product onto the world, and the world didn't care. And then after that, when we actually were able to scale from 0 to $1 million ARR the next year, and then from 1 to 4 the year after that, I started to see that, like, okay, it didn't actually work like I thought it did and like I was taught. And and so I've been kind of trying to recover from that and make sense of that for the last 5-7 years or something like that. And so I write a lot. I have a newsletter. I write on LinkedIn. And yeah, I'm building another B2B startup, and I've helped a ton of startups navigate like this product market fit journey. How do we get our first 10 customers? How do we figure out what the market really wants?
Yeah. Love that. Okay. I'll tell you a quick, I think, story related to you indirectly about Spear Growth. So there's this term at Spear Growth that we use that's called .1. And we, so that's just like the top 0.1% in the world. And that's just like, it's embedded in our job titles. It's like you become a copywriter, a senior copywriter, then a .1 copywriter. So that's the career path. And one of the many ways we describe it is that, hey, you could be a consultant. Like if you look at the consulting world, right? Like you would rather be a McKinsey consultant, right? And that's something that we just say internally. So that's just the kind of, I think, value just the ex-McKinsey title also holds. And when you and just before this, when we was discussing the topic itself, right? I was like, hey, this is goes against everything I believe about sales. I'm not a great salesperson, but I've been doing it for, I think, 3.5 years now, and I've probably gone on 1,000 sales calls. So I at least get to have a viewpoint, and this just goes against everything.
Love it.
So I'm going to really enjoy this one. So thank you so much for getting on this.
It helps me when people like thoughtfully push back and try to wrestle with these ideas with me. That is how the idea gets stronger. So love it. I'm so excited for this.
Same. So before we get into the sales bit and the case study bit, can you you keep mentioning PMF and you keep mentioning the number 10 customers?
Yeah.
Can you just describe what you call PMF before we get into it?
Yeah. So product market fit is this mystical concept that it's implied that when you have this mystical concept of product market fit, people are pulling the product out of your hands, right? They're buying it faster than you can make it. You can't hire people fast enough, right? And that is useful and that's cool in theory, but like in practice, when I don't have that, what the hell do I do, right? And how do I get towards there? So what I found is that like visualizing it more as a spectrum from like, it isn't working to it's kind of working to, oh shit, it's really working is like a super helpful thing. Now, it also helps to like to put some, let's say like more rigor around the actual definition. What I describe product market fit as, it's the demonstrated ability to replicate a customer case study where they say, hell yes, and they pull more than we push before and after the sale. And so that gets to a lot of the mechanics underneath it. I can see you ready to push back and I'm so excited for it.
No, I actually really like this one. I have my own definition of PMF, not getting into that right now, but I really like the case study angle to it. I've never heard anyone talk about it. I'm not a big fan of the, hey, you're selling it faster than you can make it. Honestly, I don't like it. The case study thing, I'll have to think a little bit more about it, but I really like the definition that you have. So that's very interesting. No one's really said that, or I've never heard that angle to PMF before this.
The reason, let me just explain why I came to that, which is that most of the definitions of product market fit put the focus on your product, which like makes, or your product or service, right? Which makes sense in theory. But what really matters is the interaction between your customer and your product. And what really matters is that they say that like it drives fast growth and retention. And so instead of saying all of that, that is kind of all encapsulated and focused on the right person, which is the customer, when you focus it at the case study level. What were they trying to achieve? How did you help them? Why are they a hell yes? And what results did they get? That is like a document or like a 3-sentence write-up. And it's just, okay, we're going to repeat the shit out of that. And that is how I think about it.
I really like that. The short version of mine is get 10 customers that pay you, give you feedback, and refer you, all three. In implementing it, obviously you need now referral systems, and now you need ways to sort of look at user behavior. A lot of that stuff, so mine gets very complicated. So so that's an issue with my definition that I have. That's why I prefer your definition slightly right now, because
yeah, and here's the challenge with your which I had that definition too. And the challenge that I had was that the customers all looked different, or they didn't look exactly, and the product wasn't exactly the same. The reason, or if they looked the same, they were using different parts of the product, right? And so for it to be one case study requires me to kind of lock all of that in and constrain the variation.
Yeah, I'm going to concede my 3-year-old definition that I've been holding on to for this one. And I'd love to invite you to there's a book that I'm writing that I've written my definition, and I'd love to just sort of, keep that in, cross it out, and then you write yours. And
Love it.
let's do it. Let's do that. I'll tell you more about this after this. But sure, okay, so now we have a PMF definition. Let's get to the sales call. That just makes me completely what's the best way to for someone to visualize what that looks like? Do you want to just show what, let's say, like, do you just want to talk through a structure of it? Do you want to, what's the best way for someone to visualize what it is before benefits and all of that stuff?
Yeah, totally. So, what probably makes the most sense is I can talk you through, there's basically 6 parts of this. I can talk you through each of the parts, and I can talk it through for the B2B software company that I am building. Literally the B2B software company that I'm building, and we can just say, okay, here's how we structure it. So the parts of the case study is just a story. And the story generally says, here's what they were trying to accomplish. Here's how we fit into their options. Here's how we helped them accomplish that thing. And here's what they literally bought. Okay, so that's the general narrative arc. The exact structure that I tend to do, again, the 6 pieces are 1. I call 1 the project, which is what is the project that was in their Trello board or in their Asana board that they woke up one morning and they said, damn it, today's the day we have to do this one project, right? Okay, that's a project that's not about buying software. It's, we have to, today's the day we have to, in my business, it's, okay, we have to get SOC 2 compliant. We have to get our software compliant. We have to get it audited because all these freaking customers are asking us for our compliance audit records, right? Cool. Okay, that's 1. That's the project. The second is why, the context. Why do we need to change? What is driving us? What is forcing us to need to change? And so in my example, like my startup, it is, okay, we need to get SOC 2 ready as quickly as possible. We've bought Vanta or Drata or one of these different tools that help us get SOC 2 compliant. But there's a ton of engineering work that we have to do in AWS that we are not ready, we don't have the bandwidth to do right now. That's the essence of it. That's why they need to change. It's why this project is on the critical path. Third slide, options. We'll call this slides. These are, you could think of them as slides or you could think of them as conversation themes. I am a McKinsey consultant, so everything is a slide. Third is, okay, they have to accomplish this project. What are the different approaches they consider to accomplish this project, and where does mine fit in? And so for my specific company, right, option 1 is they can just pause on SOC 2 entirely. Option 2 is they can either hire a consultant or dedicate internal time to refactoring their product so it gets SOC 2 compliant. Option 3, which is my option, is they can actually use software to do this very fast. Okay. Slide 4 is results. What did they get when they went down the path of picking my option? Right? Which is basically, in an hour, they got SOC 2 ready in AWS. Cool, like that. Then the natural question is, okay, how the hell did that work? Okay, cool. Slide 5 is how. How did we get them SOC 2 ready? How did they get SOC 2 ready? And where do we fit in to that? And the last slide is what? What did they literally buy? And so you can see all of this creating a very simple arc to come up with. I usually use a slide deck to navigate these conversations. You don't have to, but it really is just a causal story that helps us figure out what are they trying to achieve, how do we fit into the options they're considering, and why would they choose us versus alternatives? What are the results and how do we get them there?
This is very interesting. So when someone comes on a sales call with you, what's the context of that? Because that's one thing that I'm not able to figure out, because in this case, who are you speaking with, right? So you don't have a lot of customers. Please correct me if I'm wrong, right? You don't have a lot of customers. You barely know your ICP or your target audience. You're probably doing just random interviews to just say, hey, I'm building something, and you take a look at it and give me some feedback. So who is on this call that you then take through this narrative?
Yeah, so when you're starting out, it's like anybody who you think could look at the case study and say, oh yeah, that's me, right? Because I don't know what my ICP is. I have no idea. Like, I have theories about it. I can go and try to talk to those kinds of people. But generally, it's like, I just want to talk to 10, 20 people a week and walk them through this. And what I'm looking for is one or two of those people say, oh, hell yeah, I need that. And then I use the case study as a way to dig into why. Why them? Why not the others? Where did they get stuck? What did they have objections on? And I use that to like debug who I'm talking to and what the case study literally says.
Makes sense. So it's not, I thought that I would find some like secret sauce that, oh, you're sourcing your deals differently, but that's not the case. The case study is the magic. Yes, that we're definitely talking about. Interesting.
But when you're approaching it like this too, I mean, there's a little bit of extra magic here, because when you're approaching it like this, you're literally saying like, listen, I don't know if I can help you. If I can't help you, like, I don't know what you're trying to achieve. I'll just tell you some companies I work with, right? And what the typical case study is of a company that I work with. You tell me if it's relevant or not, right? That doesn't feel like I'm like trying to persuade you or twist your arm, which means it's way easier for me to get people into that conversation than like me doing cold outreach and pitching. So I can have a lot more of those conversations. And so that opens up some magic on the outreach side.
Now, as amazing as this sounds, it's just very hard. Because when you have a product, yeah, you're not only asking a founder to say, oh, you only do one thing, but then you're saying in the one thing that you do, focus on a specific pain point, and that just is, how do you even, like, for example, I run ads, right? And everyone will assume, oh, you just get me more leads, right? And that's the pain, but that's not a pain point, right? That's an outcome. And then I can easily right now list down 6 different pain points that my clients are solving for. So how do I even pick one case study? Is it just that, hey, I have 3, this is the best one, so I'd pick this one? Or like, how do you pick that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's like everything in life is uncertain. So you can never be 100% confident you're picking the right case study. What I found is if you try to average out across 3 case studies and include all of them, it winds up resonating with nobody. And if you try to have 3 separate case studies that are all kind of different that you're trying to push onto the world, it just becomes almost impossible to manage, because each of them wants something slightly different. And if you want to be world-class at something, you have to start with picking the thing that you're going to be world-class at, the case study that you're going to replicate. And so the way I usually get around this, though, a lot of people have this objection. I usually work with founders once they've been punched in the face for 6 to 12 months, trying every other thing in the book. And so they come to me when I don't have to do any convincing. Reality has taught them enough.
That's fair. Let's take the SOC 2 example, right? So the companies you mentioned were Drata and Vanta. Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they target SMBs. Yep. SMBs, when they get SOC 2 compliant, is just because, hey, my sales got stuck. Yep. Unstuck it, please. And then they're usually smaller companies, so they don't really have engineering bandwidth. So that's the scenario where you're sort of going in, right? So now in this scenario, like, is the pain point the sale? Is the pain point the lack of engineering bandwidth? Is the pain point, like, for example, in the story, what's the villain Like if you had to choose, what's the, I'm just trying to figure out like how do we get as specific here?
Okay, yeah. What a lot of people try to do is they try to map this onto like problems and pain points and stuff like that. The things that
I am doing that.
and I can see that, and it's hard because like I've found that the concepts of problem and pain point are more counterproductive than they are useful in the world of figuring out what people actually want. Like
they have no motive.
I know. I'm sorry. It's okay. Here's why. Right. Like one is just pain points. Life is a series of pain points that we don't do anything about. Is there any other description of life? And so what matters though is when do we actually change? When do we take action? Out of the million things we could possibly do at any one point in time, what makes it onto your critical path and why? And so that's what I've designed the case study around. So in my story, it is usually that the causal sequence underneath it is they have bought Vanta or Drata, and they have looked at the amount of engineering work it's going to take. And there's a oh shit moment right then of like, okay, something is going to be different than I thought it was. I need to figure this out. And at that moment, they either start like saying, okay, we're just going to postpone this. We're just like, we've already paid this subscription. Hopefully we'll get to this in the next 6 months. Or they say, okay, we're going to drop everything. We're going to hire somebody. We're going to make this happen now. And if I fit in at that very moment, then they're like, oh, wait a second. I can just use software? Cool, let's do that.
Makes sense. Okay. There's I'm going on tangents, a lot of tangents this time, but I'm also thinking.
Yeah, I love it.
A lot of the things that we do, right? So, for example, one of the things that I don't believe in the bias, a lot of the bias journey and stuff, right? So the thing that I do believe in, though, is what I used to call a problem-solving path. Now, in the problem-solving path, the concept, again, just the initial concept that is relevant here is in demand gen and the entire world of demand gen, which everyone has an opinion on, including me, all you're doing is you're changing priorities. And if your marketing can change someone's priorities, saying that, hey, instead of doing these 10 projects, as you call them, I'm going to change one project with this other project, then you have truly generated demand for a solution like yours, right? That's how I think about it. Now, that's the concept I was trying to think through and then tie in with the case study and it. So should I not think about, because you didn't mention specifically, don't think about pain points. Yeah. And I still, after you said that, I still cannot differentiate between how you aren't thinking about pain points here, because it just sounds like pain points to me. Right? That, hey.
Yeah, I think about like, so I think, okay, so zooming out, my view when I'm trying to understand demand for somebody is what I'm envisioning is let's say I'm trying to envision your demand, right? What I'm going to put in my mind is a Trello board or an Asana board of your projects. And I'm just going to assume that Asana board is perfectly up to date and perfectly reflects what's on your mind. Okay? If all I have to do then is I have to figure out what project do I fit into. And right, like you probably have a couple different kinds of projects. You have like the critical path project that, holy shit, we have to get this done today, right? You have another kind of project that is the backlog project that I would theoretically love to do someday, which you're never going to do, right? I value that at 0. And then you have a kind of project on there that's like, if only I knew how, I would do this kind of thing, right? And so what I'm doing is I'm trying to create a taxonomy of projects in your mind, on your backlog, on all these different things. And what I care about is, I don't know if I can influence the projects that are on your Asana board. Like, I don't I honestly don't think I'm that skilled. And so what I care about is what are the projects on your critical path now, and what causes certain projects to move onto your critical path. And so there could be pain points, right? Certain pain points could cause you to say, all right, damn it, today's the day we have to do X. But often that's not the cause. And so what I find is that the Venn diagram of pain points and like shit I'm going to do does not have a lot of overlap. And so I'll just focus on the shit I got to do part of the Venn diagram.
Makes sense. That'll open another large thread of debate. So I'm just going to leave that for another day.
Go.
So coming back to this, by the way, I absolutely love the way you've. I think my favorite part till now has been how you've changed my definition of PMF, or like the litmus test of PMF. I think that's, and it almost, my favorite part about it is that how it forces people to look at a case study, which is not just a feature which can do 10 different things, because you can, like cheat and say, hey, this one piece of my product does 10 things, and so now that's my product, right? So versus this, I really like that, because I've seen enough companies now build a product that actually does 10 things and then realize a lot later they didn't really have PMF.
Yeah, it does 10 things. We have 20 different kinds of customers. They all kind of use it differently, and none of them are very happy, and we can't retain any of them, and we don't know what to do. And yeah, 100%.
Perfect. Okay, so coming back to the case study itself, right? Let's say I go on a call. How would you open? How would you close? Because I have a couple of questions at the end of this that I love asking on these. I just call them information interviews. Just for myself. That's not a topic I talk about a lot. But then whenever I'm doing pre-PMF, launching something, then the one thing I'll always recommend is just do a bunch of information interviews. And this has given me a much better framework, I think, to do them. Thank you for that. Is there like a set of how do you open, how do you close? Apart from the founder charm, what else do you bring to the table and the case study?
I have no founder charm to bring to the table, so I just get straight in. No, it's a good question. So the way to think about the case study is it's like a very guided and structured discovery. So what most people think is for these, they need to have like an interrogation set of questions. Tell me all of your pain points. Where were you on the 30th of January? Like all these different things. The way I tend to structure these conversations is like the little getting to know you piece of like, hey, where are you based? I'm in New Hampshire. That's weird, isn't it? And so do a little bit of that and then ask like a couple of questions so that when you jump into the case study, it's not like a non sequitur I'm pulling up a screen to show you slides. And so it's usually like one or two discovery questions. For my business, I can just tell you like, mine is like, where are you in your SOC 2 journey? Like there's no rocket science. It's like, where are you in your SOC 2 journey? What have you done so far? What do you need help with? Okay, cool. Right, like that. And then it goes, and then it's like, okay, cool. Then you lead into the slides by saying, cool, well, it sounds like I might be able to help you. I'm not entirely sure. Let me walk you through the kind of person we typically help and what we typically help them with. And you can tell me if this makes sense or not, or if you have any questions. And at the end, right, at the end of it, at that point, it's depends on what your sales process is from there, but it usually is like a obvious next step. So for us, we can do this in a one call close, essentially. This next step is, hey, let's get you onboarded, right? If you're interested, you tell me. If you're interested, what we can do next, if we can get you onboarded and we'll plug this into your AWS account and you can see if you want it and you can always cancel because it's month to month, right? And then we just leave it there and maybe say, I love you and say goodbye.
Okay, what about every time people bomb it? Because I think that's going to happen more than it going well.
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to bomb more than it goes well. So does it like, where does that happen? Does it like I'm assuming the context and the options part of the case study is where it just doesn't resonate at all.
Yeah.
And then and because you aren't asking questions, you're showing them things, it just goes downhill from there. Like that's what I feel, but correct me.
Yeah, totally. And it might make sense to also center this of like saying, if you have no clue what the case study might be, this isn't going to help you, right? You should have some conversations up front to know generally anything about them, like something useful. You can't just like show up and say, here's a case study of somebody I've never met before and never heard of. I don't know anything about freight forwarders, and I'm just going to like create a, like that makes no sense. So you have to show up like actually knowing something. But the point of this actually is to get objections and for this to not resonate. Like you should love the objections, because what the objections tell you, questions of the point at like minute 27, where they're like, wait, do you do this? And it's like totally different than what you thought you did. All of those are where you get information that you can then like debug and figure out, okay, am I talking to the wrong kind of person? What about them or what about something I said caused them to say that? And that is actually the best process to find product market fit. Like, I think that is the fundamental process, is by embracing objections and dealing with them and making them comfortable giving you objections and tearing the case study apart.
I think one question I like asking at the end of every call that I bomb is, hey, what could and I make it a hypothetical. I practice a bit more, but then the question goes something around the lines of, hey, what could I change about the product that if I do, you'll recommend me to everyone, you know? And I say it in a fun way, but then they say something. When they don't like it and you joke about that, they'll at least give you a good, like, hey, I didn't really like this part. If you fix that, it resonates. And then you write it and then you fix it and you go back and say, hey, now, you told me.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. What I found is that, like, if you feel like you're pitching in these conversations, they feel like you're pitching in these conversations. And when they feel like you're pitching in these conversations, they don't tell you really what they're thinking, either because they're like scared to offend you, or they like just want to get out of the conversation. And so what I try to do is I try to get all of their objections throughout the entire thing. If they say an objection, I'm not like arguing against them. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's such a good point. And then I try to make it even more like, oh wait, are you saying this is totally irrelevant because you've already done X, Y? Fascinating. Oh, tell me more about that. Why? And so that might just be like viscerally American as an energy to give off, but you know, whatever.
Oh no, I had to learn this the hard way, because I learned this while taking customer feedback, that whenever you get customer feedback, just always take it. Your job is not to, so if they feel a certain way, that's a fact.
Yes.
Right? Because that is a fact. And then you need to, so what they might be telling you to do may not be the right thing to do, but then the feeling is a fact that you need to fix.
Yep.
So never, just always take every feedback as the truth. Because it was it. So that just that translate over to, I think sales conversations has helped me learn that. But this is very useful. Okay, so let's say if I had to do this on Monday, right? Today's Wednesday, I have to go up, wake up by Monday, do it. So what do I do from Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, so that on Monday I do as good job as I can at my first, like, let's say I have my first call on Monday. So what do I prepare? Right.
Yeah. Grab my case study deck template. Go and try to fit your case study into that, or make slight adjustments. Show it to any friendly customers you have, or any friendly people in the industry you have, and try to get them to vomit on it real quick. And then you have Thursday and Friday to do whatever the fuck you want.
Love that. Okay. Is there anything that I should have asked? And I'm assuming you don't need like I usually ask the number of people needed and the cost in implementing this. There's no cost, no people. It's just the founder and a day, right?
Yep.
So, love that. Is there anything that I should have asked that'll help people implement this that I missed asking?
Let me talk through a couple of the core mistakes people make.
Oh, please, yes.
The number one mistake is that we think people want our products. Nobody wants our product. Nobody's ever woken up in the morning and said, like, yes, today's the day I get to buy new enterprise software. I'm so excited for this, right? No, that's never happened. And so what people tend to do is they tend to look at the kind of demand side, the project that I talk about, the project, the context, all about like, hey, I want to buy a new CRM. Nobody ever does. Nobody is like, that's the worst thing you could wish on an enemy, right? And so focusing on demand as something totally separate from supply, what you're building, is the biggest mistake people make.
So, can you elaborate on that? Like, let's say if it's thinking of it as something totally separate. Well, I really love all those conversations around like specifics around demand, supply, and then how do you think about that? And that's very interesting. So, can you just double click on that piece?
Yeah. Okay. So the way I think about demand is like when people buy your product, there is something else going on. There's something in their world that made your product relevant and made it the best option for them to do something, right? And so if I just understand at the point when they buy my product, what is the project on their Asana board that has nothing to do with our product but makes our product relevant, that is the key to understanding demand. And so that's how I think about it, and that's how you figure it out. And so what a lot of startups have, when I work with startups, I've worked with startups that are up to like millions and millions in ARR, and even tens of millions of ARR. And what they find is that sometimes people buy really quickly, and sometimes it takes months, like sales cycles drag on. And the wrong answer there is to look and say, well, we have no idea. I don't know. Who our sales cycles are either 3 weeks or 6 months. We don't know, right? The right answer is to look into the situations in which you had a 3-week sales cycle and ask yourself, okay, I'm not that good at selling. Like we're not great at this. We can't conjure up demand out of nowhere. What was going on in their world at that particular point that made this? And then what you'll hear is, oh yeah, a strange coincidence there, right? Like they actually had this initiative at the company because they had hired this new person who was doing this new initiative, and they said it was perfect time and just a coincidence, right? Like, no, it's not a coincidence. That's when there is demand. And so you design around that versus trying to push your product on a bunch of people who don't want it.
Got it. And that's what you mentioned as context in the case study. Got it. You know, there's one more person, Tass Bober. I don't know if you've seen her content or heard from her at all on LinkedIn. She does landing pages, and I heard the word context from, or like the way she used context in landing pages is very similar to how you use context in your case studies. And she's always like, hey, like have a feature, but always give the context of why the feature is important on a landing page. And you both use it very similarly, and I think it's genius. Like, and both you should just look at that one piece of her. That was my favorite part in the entire interview I did with her. But yeah, sort of went on a tangent. But I really like this as well. Perfect. Okay, I think I've asked all the questions. This was a lot of learning for me, and also you broke a 3-year-old definition of mine that I was very proud of. Just at the start of the interview, so I absolutely loved this one. It's definitely one of my favorite ones. A slower one because there was a lot to take in and think about because I have very strong opinions about a lot of things that you said. So I definitely had to slow down, think, ask the next question. So, but this was Thank you so much for doing this, Rob.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of fun. And I appreciate talking with people who have had a lot more experience on this and are try to wrestle with like this. And is this right? How does this work with the other things too? So that's like, I think that's going to help a lot of people.
Perfect. And then just before we go, 2 questions, right? So one, if someone had to find you, what's the best way to find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn inbox is awful. And so if you need to get in touch with me, you should go to my website or reply, like send me an email, and I will hopefully be able to get back to you.
Love that. Okay. And then if you had to give a quick elevator pitch to whoever is that's listening to this, what would that look like?
I don't know. If you're hitting your head against the wall in the early stage, check out some of the stuff that I've written, try some of the case study stuff, and if you want to dig deeper, reach out.
Love that. Again, thanks so much for doing this, Rob. This was a great episode. Like for me personally, this was a great conversation, great episode. I'm sure a few people would. I hope someone tries this out, gets stuck, tries your. This goes through some of the material you've written, and then this gets unstuck for them, because those first-time customers are such a pain. But I love this. Yeah.
And so brutal, but awesome. Yeah. All right, man. Good to meet you.
Thank you for listening to the TLDR podcast. In case you're wondering, Spear Growth is a marketing agency. We help B2B SaaS companies like yourself with ads and SEO. Check out our website at speargrowth.com. That is SPEARGROWTH.com. Just like this, every episode starts with a 1-minute summary of what we discuss. Pick the next episode to listen to based on what you can implement right away. And after you implement any of these tactics and see an impact, we'd appreciate you drop us a note on podcast@speargrowth.com.